Hi, we're from Group 13.
And this is our podcast.
Welcome to Beyond the Gavel, where we expose the dark truth behind Indonesia's legal system. I'm Kendell Omar, and today we have an exclusive interview that will shake your faith in justice. In April 2025, 4 judges were named suspects in a bribery scandal involving palm oil exports worth 60 billion rupiah. Today, one of the judges agreed to be interviewed regarding the corruption. Joining me now is someone we'll call Judge X, one of the judges involved in the palm oil corruption. Judge X, thank you for agreeing to this interview. So let's start with the basics. How did you first get involved with the bribe?
It wasn't something I planned, Kendall. It started small, a gift here, favor there. The lawyers would say it would just a gratitude for my fair consideration of their cases.
But you knew this violated Article 2.4 of the Judges Code of Ethics, requiring you to report any gifts within 30 days.
Of course I knew. We all did. When you're facing pressure from above, when your salary barely covers your family needs, and when everyone around you seems to be doing it, the lines get blurry.
This is exactly the mindset that destroys public trust. According to Law Number 48 of 2009 on judicial power, judges must maintain independence and integrity. There is no excuse for corruption.
Easy for you to say from your every power, Professor. You've never had a corporate lawyers offering you more money than you make in a year just to consider their perspective.
Judge X, can you actually walk us through how the palm oil bribery actually worked? As someone who's covered corruption cases for years, I know these schemes are often more sophisticated than people actually realize.
The lawyers approached us after the prosecution demanded trillions in compensation from Permata Hijau Group, Wilmar Group, and Musimas Group. They said these were consultation fees for legal advice.
Consultation fees? You were sitting judges. That's a clear violation of judicial independence. This is exactly why we've been pushing for stronger oversight mechanism. The Corruption Eradication Commission and civil society have been warning about these practices for years.
The system is broken. Do you know how many cases I handle in a month? How much pressure we're under when someone offers a solution that helps everyone?
Helps everyone? What about the Indonesian people who lost 60 billion rupiah?
That wasn't how we saw it at the time.
What we're hearing from Judge X represents a fundamental breakdown in professional ethics. As stated in our research, integrity functions as the primary safeguard against corruption in legal practice. When legal professionals internalize ethical values rather than merely following procedures, they naturally resist corrupt practices like bribery and collusion.
The case involving these 4 judges, Muhammad Arif Nurianta, Juyamto, Agam Sharif Baharudin, and Ali Mutarom, perfectly illustrates how individual corruption undermines Indonesia's entire legal framework. Article 1.3 of our Constitution declares Indonesia a state of law, but corruption makes that declaration meaningless.
Judge X, do you understand how your actions affected public trust in the judicial system?
I'm starting to see that now. When I took that money, I wasn't just betraying my oath. I was betraying every Indonesian who believes in justice.
According to Transparency International Indonesia's research, 20 to 30% of Jakarta's youth already show permissive attitudes toward corruption. Nearly half believe lying or cheating can be acceptable in certain circumstances. As a law student, this terrifies me because it means we're entering a profession where ethical standards are already compromised before we even graduate. Cases like yours don't just damage the judiciary, they poison the entire legal education system. When law students see practicing judges taking bribes, it normalizes corruption as just how things work in the real world. We study constitutional law, we don't memorize judicial power law, we write essays about integrity, but then we see cases like the palm oil scandal and wonder if everything we're learning is just theoretical nonsense.
You think I don't know that? You think I sleep well at night knowing I've contributed to this cycle?
What drives someone with legal training to ignore everything they learn about ethics?
No, it's not about the training, it's about the environment. When corruption is normalized, when you see colleagues getting away with it, when the system rewards those who play along, integrity becomes a luxury you can afford.
That's exactly what we call moral disengagement. In psychology, it's a process where people convince themselves that unethical behavior is acceptable by using justification like everyone does it or I had no choice. But Judge X, you did have a choice. You choose to rationalize corruption instead of maintaining your moral standards. Psychological perspective, corruption often starts with a small compromise, what we call the slippery slope. First, you may accept a small gift, then another invitation, then gradually larger bribes. Each step seems minor, but collectively they erode your ethical boundaries until corruption feels normal.
That's exactly the problem. As our analysis shows, legal professionals must go beyond formal compliance. Ethics should become a daily, internalized practice and not just a checkbox of rules.
And that's where psychological training becomes crucial. Legal professionals need to understand their own cognitive biases and the psychological pressure that lead to corruption. We need to teach people to recognize when they're rationalizing unethical behavior and giving them mental tools to resist those kind of pressure.
So, Judge X, what consequences are you facing now?
Criminal charges, obviously. Possible imprisonment. But the worst part is knowing I've lost everything I worked for. My reputation, my family respect, and my belief in myself.
Now let's be clear about the broader consequences. This isn't just about 4 individual judges. My reporting shows us that cases like this create a ripple effect throughout the entire judicial system. Public trust in courts plummets, lawyers become more brazen in their corruption attempts, and honest judges faces increased pressure to play along with the system.
Right? This is why anti-corruption advocates have been pushing for systematic reform, not just individual prosecutions. When corruption becomes normalized in any institution, it metastasizes like cancer. Every corrupt judge makes it harder for ethical judges to maintain their integrity.
Do you have any messages for other legal professionals who might be tempted by corruption?
Before Judge X answers, I want to emphasize something crucial. We can't just rely on individual morality to fight corruption. Yes, personal integrity matters, but we need systemic changes, stronger oversight bodies, better whistleblower protection, transparent judicial process, and severe consequences for violations.
Before Judge X answers, I want to add something from a psychological perspective. The shame and guilt that Judge X is experiencing now, that's actually a normal psychological response to moral injury. When someone violates their core values, it creates what we call as moral distress. The brain literally experiences this as trauma because it conflicts with your identity as a good person.
That's exactly how it feels, like I've lost who I am.
And that psychological damage often extends beyond the individual. Your family, your colleagues, or even law students like Zifa, they all experience secondary trauma from seeing corruption in the legal system they trusted.
Don't do it. Whatever pressure you're facing, whatever justification you're telling yourself, it's not worth it. The money disappears, but the shame lasts forever.
The real tragedy is that this could have been prevented with stronger oversight and ethical education from the start. We've been advocating for judicial reform for decades, but it takes political will and public pressure to make it happen.
Based on our research, what systemic changes are needed to prevent future corruption? Because as students studying governance and public policy, I think we need to look at this from multiple perspectives. First, there's the institutional framework where we need stronger oversight mechanisms, not just the KPK, but also empowering the Judicial Commission and professional honorary councils to conduct more rigorous monitoring. The current system clearly has gaps if four judges could operate a bribery scheme for so long without it being detected, right?
Right. Exactly right, Fia. We need to strengthen supervision and law enforcement against ethical violations, ensure transport reporting mechanisms with whistleblower protection, and continue judicial bureaucratic reform.
But Professor, I argue we also need to address the root cause. Like, why do judges feel pressured to accept bribes? Is it inadequate opportunities or workload pressure, or is it a cultural problem where corruption has been normalized in this generation? We need comprehensive reform that addresses salary structures, working conditions, and create basically a merit-based promotion system that maybe would reward integrity.
That's a great point, Fia. It's not just about institutions. We need cultural change. Legal profession must actively reject intervention and maintaining independence.
Exactly. And from a policy perspective, we need to implement what I call the three-pillar approach. So prevention through education and fair compensation, detection through technology and transparent processes, and punishment through swift, consistent enforcement. Because countries like Singapore have shown that this works when it is implemented comprehensively.
Professional ethics education needs to be continuous, not just during law school, but throughout careers. As a law student, what frustrates me the most is that we memorize laws like Article 16 of the Notary Law about honesty and independence, but there's a huge disconnect between what's written and what actually happens in practice. We need practical ethics training using real cases like this palm oil scandal in our constitutional law classes. Instead of studying foreign corruption cases, we should examine recent Indonesian cases to understand that corruption isn't something that happens elsewhere. It's something that we need to actively guard against in our future careers.
That's right, Ziva. And education must include mentorship programs and regular integrity assessments. The legal profession needs to police itself better through peer accountability and safe reporting channels.
So Judge X, after hearing all of these solutions, if you could go back to the start, what would you do differently?
Everything. I'd report the first approach. I'd maintain my integrity. I remember that being a judge means serving justice, not serving myself.
As we've seen today, integrity isn't just a personal virtue, but it is a professional obligation that sustains justice itself. For legal professionals listening, remember that institutions are only as credible as the ones who represent them. For citizens, never stop demanding accountability from those who serve justice. This has been Behind the Gavel. I'm Kendell Omar, and remember, in a democracy, justice delayed is justice denied, and justice corrupted is democracy destroyed. Thank you.